Hey my dudes, today we are talking about the Kershaw Atmos. Atmos, name, origins unknown, reminds me immediately of Final Fantasy IX. But it's a really good little budget knife from Kershaw. Subtitle of this video is going to be Kill Your Inner Steel Snob. You will not get to experience this knife if you are too bothered about blade steels, which I mean I generally am. I'm that guy who compares them all and measures them out and things. I'm a bit of a detractor of the 8CR13 MOV that's in this one. But a lot like the CRKT Pilar before, this is one that, I don't know, it'll do a good job for you. As long as you're happy to sharpen it every now and then, a bit more often than most. I've been carrying this for a week, I've had to sharpen it twice. But as long as you're okay with that, then this is a good knife for the price. Let's take it down to the tabletop and have a bit more of a prolonged gaze at it, shall we? Stay tuned. All right, so this is it. Kershaw Atmos. It's a Dmitry Sinkovich design. You may pick that immediately from the blade. Very reminiscent of the 0450, the zero tolerance ZT 0450 knife. That is probably one of the, I would probably even hazard to guess it being the best selling zero tolerance knife, the most widely enjoyed. One of their EDC sized offerings. So yep, Sinkovich is back with Kershaw again after a few cool little collaborations. What have I had from him? I've had the 0450. I had the Reverb, which wasn't great. It was similar to this. No, not the Reverb, sorry. It was the other one that had it was a bit less robust than this one. It had a bit of a dicky lock on it. I'll show it up on the screen now. Whatever that one was called, it wasn't the best. It was fine. I had the Pub, which was a cool little keyring sort of bottle opener slash dog tag type knife. And then this one as well. So Sinkovich has designs that are pretty kind of angular and cool looking, really good looking designs generally from Sinkovich. He does what I like companies to do. He is all for the slim footprint this way. So a few of his traits have definitely come across into this budget offering from Kershaw. So let's look at the elements of the knife. We'll start with the overall look and shape and purpose of it. Let's go with that. So the purpose of this knife, this is pure everyday carry. So light tasks, common use, frequent carry, these are the jobs that this knife is made for. So your incidentals, you're cutting open that one thing, you're cutting that one bit of fruit, that sort of thing. Worksite knife, probably not. You probably want something a bit more akin to a paramilitary or an American lawman, or if you are on a budget, something like maybe the Cold Steel Working Man, something a bit larger, a bit more grip-tastic, more space for your hand, a bit more robust. This is just pure EDC, something that is as fun to play with as it is to use. So that I would say would be the purpose of this Atmos knife. Looking at the blade, so the blade is what impresses me most about this knife. It is fairly thin, which is good. So just size comparison with the Delica here. It is about as thin as the Delica, maybe a smidge thicker, but more robust along the whole, at least the whole spine of the blade. It's of course a hollow grind compared to the flat of the Delica. Hollow grind knives are excellent at slicing material that is deeper than the whole blade, because what it does is it does all the cutting in this bottom sort of centimeter here, and then it has this shoulder to push the material apart. So slicing with a hollow grind knife is really pleasurable, a really fun thing to do. It's a nice grind to use. Cons of the hollow grind, I guess, is that it is more fragile, which purpose though? Single use kind of EDC knife, one job at a time. Probably not the biggest deal, so hollow grind was a great choice. And they have done an excellent hollow grind with this one. I'm not sure if you can see from the light arcing up that surface there, but this is a thin behind the edge hollow grind for sure. Pinching it along here, it is nice and there's lots of life in this edge. The more you sharpen back, say a flat grind, the more wedge-like it eventually becomes. I mean, this one would take ages because the blade stock's thin, but you get those thicker flat ground knives. They can become wedge-like quicker than the hollow grinds that companies like Kershaw are often akin to using. So yeah, it's a really well-ground knife. Don't mind the edge on it right now. You can probably see there's some slight wonk to it. Very much a At the end of the review, I did my edge testing with it, so that's just from that. It'll get neatened out in the end. This is no indication of how it comes from the factory. That's a workshop edge on it, starting at about here, going away to the top, probably nubbed over the tip just a tad, so not an indication. The knife came in great condition from the factory. This one has no issues at all. It's pretty well centered, you know, a little bit to this side of the knife, but it's got a great action. The scales are well machined. It's got like this plastic backspacer that seems to fit correctly. The spring clip is absolutely fine. It's all well put together. There is nothing shaky or rattly or givey on this blade at all. The lockup is absolutely 50%, so sitting there very, very comfortably with a pretty thin liner lock. But again, sporadic daily EDC use. You're not going to be taking this knife to your construction site job. Well, if you are, then you might not have as much success as if you just kept it for, you know, the more civil times in your life. So that's the blade, that's the general overall construction. The handle is, it's a classic Singovich handle. It is angle here, angle here, angle here, angle here. No worries at all. Those angles fit quite well within the human hand. It is a little bit on the smaller side. So if your hands are slightly smaller than mine, this will be the perfect handle for you. As it stands for me though, it's absolutely fine. It's got some overhang just in the back fatty part of my hand, but again, occasional EDC use, you get right on there, no worries at all. Really, really enjoyed using this knife. I've carried it for a solid week and there has not been a single problem with it. What's that, dear? Your cheek hurts. All right, come here then. All right, sorry about that interruption. I was on a bit of a roll, so let's just keep it going. So yeah, Singovich does a good handle, just a little bit small for my hand, but overall, no worries at all. Very much his style. So looking at the materials here, you've got G10, you've got a sheet of that fake carbon fibery sort of stuff, just for appearances. And you know what? It actually works kind of well. Like, I'm glad they've just done the strip of it. Don't like the whole handle made of it because I hate that shine. It just doesn't do it for me on a whole handle, but I think it looks fine. But then that's completely objective, so there you go. Clip is the only real sore spot, and I mean that literally. This is, I know, I often, you know, sometimes knife clips are just a bit too shallow. This one is obviously going the other way. Look at that giant kick it's got there to catch every pocket seam it could possibly be used to reckon with. But it sticks in your hand just a tiny bit when you're cutting with it, and you kind of, it latches onto the fat of your palm, and your palm kind of, when you're using it a bit rougher, your palm sort of squidges it around and it hurts just a tiny bit. Again, I think this knife is just for your occasional cuts, like your, oh yeah, I've got a knife, pull it out, use it once, put it back in your pocket, not your, you know, let's cut this, you know, 1,500 feet of cardboard over and over again, but there you go. So yeah, now the main thing with this knife, obviously I'm going to bring it up because I am a steel tard knife wanker, that kind of bloke. This has got 8CR13 MOV steel, which is the go-to budget steel for Kershaw, CRKT, Spyderco, cold steel now even by the looks of it. It's a pretty low-end steel. The factory edge, I took it straight out of the box and cut my sisal rope with it. It cut it 40 times before it no longer did a paper slice. And then I've gone from that, put my workshop edge on it, and it's actually gone up to 55 times, and then it stopped doing that. Yeah, it was probably on its way out at about 50 or so, but at any rate, it got an okay result for a steel of this caliber. The best thing about it though is ground well. When you have a really thin behind the edge blade, even once the main edge is no longer sort of hair shaving sharp, the knife will still cut well just because it's a narrow amount of material that is starting that sort of penetration through whatever you're cutting. So ground well, so the 8CR is kind of doing its best that it can do. It's like optimized it. As much as you can optimize such a steel. Flipping action, great. It flips really, really well. This beggars the question, why are Kershaw still using SpeedSafe when they can just make this knife without any sort of assist, legal in way more places. SpeedSafe is illegal here in Australia. You can't import it. Not illegal to have it once it's here, but you can't import it. Why they would just continue using it when this is a cheap knife, and this one flips like a dream. So it does really, really well on its, and it's just washers, I believe. I will just open it up and check in a second. There will be an edit if that is the case. Alrighty, let's do some size comparisons. Crack this one open, there we go. Spyderco Delica is first. It's kind of like the go-to. So you'll see here we're looking at a blade length of about 3 inches, handle length of just a little bit less. The cutting edge is probably on the 3 inches, whereas the Spyderco's cutting edge is like 2.8, 9 or something like that. Does pretty well for having a good amount of blade for a smaller knife. Looking at the handle there, the Spyderco has the longer handle, a bit more going on in it, a bit more robust, a bit more comfortable for myself, but really, you've got to be thinking this is, you know, at least half the price of this one. So it's not going to have as much sort of finesse in it and that sort of long-term ingrained Spyderco handle design that you get. It makes the Delica such a winner, like in terms of being, anyone can pick up a Delica and use it well. Comparing it to the Cold Steel American Lawman, which is a much bigger, more robust knife. This is the knife to bring to the work site. This is the knife to keep in your exercise shorts all day or whatever. Like, it's just different. But, you know, there's an illustration of the size. You'll see it's got a more robust, thick blade. All that sort of stuff going on with it. Much different. Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Again, if you're not fussed about the tip, this is like another perhaps work site knife. Much more handle, much more blade, just longer lasting, more comfortable for the duration of a longer task. Let's look at these, a GEC Farm and Field. Another little... these are sort of same purpose as these. Just occasional use, get it out, cut a couple of little things, put it back in. So love this knife. One of my awesome viewers donated that one to the channel. So still awesome, still using that one. Benchmade Fact. Pretty different knife, pretty tactical, long and skinny, S30V, you know, size comparison. There you go. And then we've got Benchmade 940, kind of in the same vein as this one. You know, there isn't, you know, it's not exactly the same, but this is the same sort of knife I feel in. You can probably push these knives a little bit harder than these. You know, these have got quite thin little linerless G10 handles. A bit less going on in this one, but sort of similar as in low footprint, you know, very light carry. Yeah, even similar in terms of the handle shape and the rough performance. I'm being rough here, but it's obviously a much nicer version of this. But this is $50 in Australia, which is, for anyone who'll know, for a good design is great money. Let's check it against my other orange knives. So it's the Cold Steel Working Man, and we've got the Spyderco Dragonfly. Bigger than a Dragonfly, smaller than a Working Man, and there we go. The knife that I feel in my collection it is most similar to is this knife here, the Alma Falcon. Just ultra light, pretty usable for occasional use, not particularly hungry to be adapted into anything heavier. This is kind of what it feels like, but then this is a quarter of the price of an Alma Falcon for steel that is about as good realistically. Grounds really well done knife. Almas are going to be probably finished a little bit better, but they've got their own idiosyncrasies too that you need to be on board with. Mostly the price, but also a bit of lock rock develops in that back lock there, and that's a pretty universal tale from those as well. So there you go. This is great value. Like, this is a knife that I've really enjoyed. I've enjoyed it heaps more than I thought it would, even since having the other sort of Kershaw Sinkovich type knife. What was that called? Standby. This is driving me crazy. I'll just have to dig it out of my reviews, because it was one of those ones that I gave it a bit of a negative rap because it had the fraction. The fraction is what it was. It had this lock-up issue where you could lock it up, you'd flip it open, and then it kind of bounced the lock shut, and then you could just fold the lock shut again. No such issues with this one. This is better made than my Kershaw Fraction. So very cool. And then the reverb as well, I believe, was the one with the carabiner on the back, which I didn't love either. So yeah, this is a great budget knife. Is it my favorite budget knife? I'm not sure. You know, the steel is a little less good than the Rake P801 SF. But it's a lighter package, and for pure EDC, geez, it's light. Let's get these scales out. Let's have a look at how light this thing is. So, kitchen scales, in the grams, It's 54 grams, 55 grams. That is like, you know, Delica is 66. This is one of the lighter knives. You get the Almar Falcon, I think it's in the low 40s, but it's more substantial than the Almar Falcon. It's got a little bit more going on in it, a little bit more, you know, end user customization. It's probably a better knife than the Almar Falcon if you're just looking at them completely objectively, in terms of materials and in terms of value, frankly. So yeah. It's a really light knife. It's a really well-designed knife. It's got the Sinkovich flair that you see in those awesome ZTs, but if you don't want to pull out, you know, 180 from your bank account US or 250 US and get a Sinkovich from Zero Tolerance, this is the one to get. So this is better than the other Kershaw Sinkoviches, and frankly, I probably enjoy it more than the Zero Tolerance 0450 because this one actually slices and cuts really, really well. Similar blade shape to the 0460, I think, except that one has a little bit more of a Persian sort of upsweep to it, but it's going to slice about that good rather than you know, like the 0450, which was a bit of a wedge in my recollection, if that's correct. So yeah, this is the Kershaw, the budget Kershaw to beat, I believe. And it's a budget knife that I'm actually enjoying carrying. Yeah, you'll sharpen it a little bit more. The clip is a tiny bit sharp, but those are the only flaws. And really, the steel, the price factors the steel, so that's fine. The clip is not a big enough issue to worry about. This is a great knife. Just don't expect too much of it. It's not your beta knife. It is just a great EDC fiddle knife for having a knife in your pocket, barely noticing it's there, but when you are at home, super fun to flip, close, fiddle with, open, all good. Lots of good stuff here in the Kershaw Sinkovich Atmos. All right, thanks for watching, dudes. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.